Good day, everyone. I, Irene Montero, Matiliano Roji, and Mepiasa Mayan will be reporting on prosocial behavior and why people help. The learning objectives are, at the end of the discussions, students would be able to know the basic motives that determine whether people help others, personal qualities that influence whether a given individual will help, the situations in which people more likely or less likely to help others, and the ways to be done to promote prosocial behavior. First to discuss is the basic motives underlying prosocial behavior. Why do people help, and what are the basic motives that determine whether people help others? To comprehend this topic, we must first define prosocial behavior and altruism. Prosocial behavior, an any act performed with the goal of benefiting another person. It signifies that prosocial behavior refers to an individual's act of assisting others, while altruism is a desire to help another person even if it involves a cost to the helper, which it refers to a person's willingness to aid someone regardless of the cost. Next is the basic origins of prosocial behavior and altruism. First is the evolutionary psychology, the instincts and genes. Theory of evolution. Natural selection favors genes that promote the survival of the individual. Any gene that furthers our survival and increases the probability that we will produce offspring is likely to be passed on from generation to generation. Genes that lower our chances of survival, such as those causing life-threatening diseases, reduce the chances that we will produce offspring and thus are less likely to be passed on. So, the theory of evolution in genes aims to explain social behaviors in terms of genetic variables that have evolved over time. It was discovered that altruistic conduct would vanish over the history of human evolution because the people who performed altruistically would generate fewer children than people who acted selflessly but putting themselves in danger. So we have the way that evolutionary psychologists attempt to resolve. We have kin selection. Kin selection, the idea that behaviors that help a genetic relative are favored by natural selection, which it implies that people can improve their chances of passing on their genes not only by having their own children, but also by ensuring that their genetic relatives have offspring in order for their genes to thrive in future generations and ensure their survival. Natural selection should be preferred at altruistic acts than toward genetic relation as a result of this. And it may have become ingrained in human behavior, and as a result, the genes of people who help their relatives are more likely to survive than the genes of people who do not. The best example of this is when you are in a life or death situation and must choose between relatives and non-relatives. Individuals are more likely to assist genetic relatives than non-relatives. It shows that people are more likely to assist in ways that secure the survival of their own genes. And altruism, based on kin selection, is the enemy of civilization. If human beings are to a large extent guided to favor their own relatives and tribe, only a limited amount of global harmony is possible. Next, the reciprocity norm. To explain the altruism, evolutionary psychologists point the reciprocity norm that it is the expectation that helping others will increase the likelihood that they will help us in the future. That people who have created a reciprocity agreement with their neighbors which states, I will help you now on the condition that you will help me when I need it in the future. The emotion of gratitude, the positive feelings that are caused by the perception that one has been helped by others, evolve in order to regulate reciprocity. That if someone helps us, we feel gratitude, which motivates us to return the favor in the future. For example, when someone helps us, we feel grateful, which pushes us to return the favor in the future. Next, the group selection. Group selection classic evolutionary theory argues that natural selection operates on individuals. People who have traits that make them more likely to survive are more likely to reproduce and pass those traits on to future generations. Some argue that natural selection also operates at the group level. Group A, for example, is made up of entirely selfish individuals who refuse to put themselves at danger to help. Group B, on the other hand, is unselfish and put their lives in danger. Of the two groups, the one with the selfless centries is more likely to win because even if their lives are in danger, their unselfish behavior ensures that their group will survive, which is in fact the group that places a high value on altruism. However, there are additional reasons for prosocial conduct that aren't always rooted in people's genes. One example is heroes who risk their lives to save those who were not related to them, and by rescuing family members. They demonstrated they are not genetically programmed to assist genetic kin. People aid others according to evolutionary psychologists because of elements that have become established in their genes. Next is the social exchange, the costs and rewards of helping. Social exchange theory argues that much of what we do stems from the desire to maximize our rewards and minimize our costs. Social exchange theories assume that just as people in economic marketplace try to maximize the ratio of their monetary profits to their monetary losses, people in their relationships with others try to maximize the ratio of social rewards to social cost. That helping someone is an investment in the future, since that person will be there for you when we need them. Also, helping others can get you such a reward. For example, if a person is involved in murder investigation and police personnel are tasked with locating him in exchange for a reward, this is an example of how assisting can be costly. People help when the benefits outweigh the cost. However, some people are willing to give up their lives for the sake of others. People, according to social psychologists, have golden hearts and occasionally help just for the sake of helping. Those who have given their life to benefit others are an example. Next, the empathy and altruism. The pure motive for helping is the strongest proponent of the idea that people often help purely out of the goodness of their hearts. People sometimes help others for selfish reasons, such as to relieve their own distress of seeing another person suffer. But people motives are sometimes purely altruistic in that their only goal is to help the other person even if doing so involves some cost to them. First is the empathy, which is the ability to put oneself in the shoes of another person and to experience events and emotions. Example, the joy and sadness, the way the person experiences them. The pure altruism is alive to compassion when a person feels empathy for a person in need of help. That is, when a person places oneself in the shoes of another person and experience events and emotions in the same way that person does. For example, while passing on the road, an elderly woman was carrying a full basket of fruits, which she struggled to carry since it was too heavy. Someone will help her if they have empathy for her situation. The, emph- the empathy altruism hypothesis will subsequently be included, which is the idea that when we feel empathy for a person, we will attempt to help that person for purely altruistic reasons, regardless of what we have to gain.
So let's move on to the personal qualities and pro-social behavior. So what are some personal qualities that influence whether a given individual will help? So one of it is the individual differences, specifically the altruistic personality. So it is natural to assume that such people have an altruistic personality. It is the quality that causes an individual to help others in a wide variety of situations. So, of course, it is common to humans to help each other, to show our genuine care, and also our selfless character. So, in altruistic personality, people tend to help each other in a different kind of situation, or regardless of what circumstances it is, we always extended our help because it is already within with our personality. So some people have also more of an altruistic personality than the others. And to be able to determine why do other people have more of this personality, psychologists have developed instruments to measure this quality. So this picture is an instrument to measure the altruistic personality. So as you can see here in the picture, there are set of statements and every statement has a corresponding number from 1 to 5. So you have to rate whether that specific statement does not describe you very well or it does describe you very well. So these questions form a scale by Davis 1983 to measure the empathic concern, especially our feelings of sympathy for the other people in need. So it means the higher your score is, the more empathic concern you express. Next is gender differences in prosocial behavior. So the question is, are men or women more likely to help in each situation? So in Western cultures, the male sex roles includes being chivalrous and heroic. Females are expected to be nurturing and caring and to value close long-term relationships. In 7,000 people who received medals from the Carnegie Hero Fund Commission for risking their lives to save a stranger, 91% have been men. In contrast, women are more likely than men to provide social support to their friends and to engage in volunteer work that involves helping others.
The cultural differences in prosocial behavior. People often favor their in-groups or the groups with which they identify as a member and discriminate against members of out-groups, defined as groups with which they do not identify. And there are two groups, which is the in-group and out-group. In-group, the group with which an individual identifies as a member, while the out-group, any group with which an individual does not identify. So, the out-group members, such as the people of other races or cultures, face discrimination. For example, indigenous people are discriminated against by some Christians because of who they are. Even though there is discrimination, individuals will sometimes aid them out of charity, even if they are from a different group. People contribute for a variety of reasons, but they also help in group if they have empathy for their members who are in need. Next, religion and prosocial behavior. There is a pervasive stereotype that religious people are more moral and feel more empathy toward others than non-religious people do. A very important feature of religion is that it binds people together and creates strong social bonds, and as a result, religious people are more likely to help than other people are if the person in need of help shares their beliefs. The religion has the ability to bring people together, regardless of their religious affiliations, even non-religious people. People are more willing to help than others in group favoritism. On the other hand, occurs when people feel greater empathy for in-group members than for out-group members. For example, if you are searching for volunteers to help clean up after a church celebration, others will not help unless they are members of the congregation, and those members of the congregation are the ones who helped.
The effects of mood on prosocial behavior. Several studies have found out that positive emotions boost prosocial behavior. According to research, the majority of joyful emotions lead to helpful behaviors, while the effect of negative emotion on prosocial behavior is disputed. People are more inclined to help if they are in good mood. For instance, helping others makes you feel good. Pro-social activity has been linked to improved psychological well-being, better social relationship, and improved physical health. As a result, pro-social behavior benefits both individuals who receive assistance and those who provide assistance. Given the numerous benefits of pro-social behavior, many individuals are eager to promote it.
The effects of the media, especially the video games and the music lyrics. So what are the effects of playing prosocial video games such as lemmings on people's behaviors? So research shows that those who have just played a prosocial video game are more likely to help others than are people who have just played a neutral video game. So the reason of this might be that people who played prosocial video game develop and expose themselves in a situation or the idea of volunteering and helping someone. So prosocial video game or listening to prosocial song makes people more creative. It works in at least two ways. First is by increasing people's empathy towards someone in need of help and increasing the accessibility of thoughts about helping others. So let's proceed to the situational determinants of pro-social behavior. So in what situations are people more likely or less likely to help others? There are three situations which would determine if people will be more likely or less likely to help others. And first is the environmental, which is the rural versus urban. So studies have found that people in small towns are more likely to help when asked to find a lost child, give directions, and return a lost letter than the large cities. So increased helping in small towns has been found in several countries. So another question is, why are people more likely to help in small towns? It might be because people who grow up in a small town are more likely to internalize altruistic values. So that means people who grew up in the small towns have the higher possibility to help even if they were visiting to a big city. So why is that people in the large cities will be less likely to help others? So the urban overload hypothesis would say that people living in cities are constantly bombarded with stimulation and that they keep to themselves to avoid being overwhelmed by it. So the idea in this theory is that living in the cities makes people less altruistic by nature. This means that people in the urban are less likely to help. Therefore, to predict whether people will help, it is important to know whether they are currently in a rural or urban area. So next is the residential mobility. People who have lived for a long time in one place are more likely to engage in pro-social behaviors that help their community. Residing in one place leads to a greater attachment to the community, more interdependence with one's neighbors, and a greater concern with one's reputation in the community. So in this social situation, people will be more likely to help and engage in the community in which they reside for a long time for the reason that it is also for the common good and benefits not just by themselves but for all the people in the area. So if you are residing in that community for a long period of time, you will become committed to that community and shows a greater concern for the rest of the area you are residing. Another one is the number of bystanders or the bystanders effect. So why does people fail to help those who was in their need of help or in emergency situations? So the bystanders effect, it is the finding that the greater the number of bystanders who witness an emergency, the less likely any one of them is to help. So to better understand, let's take it as an example. If a car on the side of the road was on fire, would you think everyone would stop to help those people in the car? So according to this bystanders effect, if many people are witnessing the emergency, the fewer the people will actually stop and help because most people figure that the other people are already helping. So let's move on to this question. Why is it that people are less likely to help when others are present? So Latane and Darley, 1970, developed a 5-step tree that describes how people decide whether to intervene in an emergency. So first is noticing an event. John Darley and Danielle Batson, 1973, demonstrated that something as seemingly trivial as how much of a hurry people are in can make more of a difference than what kind of people they are. So Darley and Batson would say that if people do not even notice that there is an emergency because they are in a hurry, so of course, they would not intervene and offer to help. So the second step is interpreting an event as an emergency. The next determinant of helping is whether the bystander interprets the event as an emergency or as a situation where help is needed. Sometimes, we might get confused of what really emergency is. If we heard a scream coming from someone, can we tell that he is just having a good time at a party or he is being attacked? So if people assume that what they have witnessed is not an emergency, then obviously they will not help. So it is really important that we interpret an event carefully so that we would distinguish when we should help. So for instance, you are sitting in a class one day and notice that some white vapor or smoke is coming out of an air conditioning vent. So because you weren't sure about what to make of this, you look around and see how other people are responding. You notice that the person to your left is looking at the vent and doesn't seem concerned at all. So you conclude that there is nothing to worry about. So same goes to the guy sitting beside you. He may look unconcerned because he also saw you that you weren't panicking. So he also assumed that there was nothing to worry about. So this is what pluralistic ignorance means. It is the case in which people think that everyone else is interpreting a situation in a certain way when in fact they are not. Next is assuming responsibility. Even if we interpret an event as an emergency, we have to decide that it is our responsibility, not someone else, to do something about it. So in this social situation, even if people perceive that such event is an emergency, if they think that it is not their responsibility to help, then most probably they will not help. So dito papasok yung tinatawag nating diffusion of responsibility. It is the phenomenon wherein each bystander's sense of responsibility to help decreases as the number of witnesses increases. So this means that if the bystanders notice that there are a huge number of witnesses in that specific situation or emergency, then they would less likely to help because they will think that the witnesses would do something about it. So the fourth step is knowing how to help. Even if people have made it this far in the helping sequence, another condition must still be met. They must decide what kind of help is appropriate. So for example, on a hot summer day, you see a woman collapse in the street. No one else seems to be helping, so you decide it is up to you. But what should you do? So of course, you have to think about the case of the woman. If she has a heart attack, is she suffering from heat stroke? So you have to think of what appropriate help you should perform. Or would you also call an ambulance, give CPR, or try to get her on the sun? So obviously, if people do not know what appropriate assistance to give, they will not be unable to help. Lastly, deciding to implement help. So even if you know exactly what kind of help is appropriate, there is still reasons why you might decide not to intervene. For one thing, you might not be qualified to deliver the right kind of help. So let's go back to our example about the woman who collapsed in the street. Even if the woman is complaining about chest pains, indicating heart attack, you may not know how to give CPR. So even if we know exactly what kind of help is needed, when we do not even know how to perform it by ourselves, then we will less likely to do something about it. So we have to think the other way, or if we do it by ourselves, we also have to think if we are qualified to perform such intervention.
And for the last part of our topic, how can helping be increased? And what can be done to promote prosocial behavior? First, increasing the chances of bystanders intervening. According to research, informing individuals about the barriers to bystander intervention improves the probability that they will assist in an emergency. Always reminding individuals of occasions when they acted freely can also be effective. The bystander effect can have a detrimental influence on prosocial behavior, generosity, and heroism. Researchers have found a number of distinct variables that might help people overcome this inclination and improve their chance of engaging in helping activities. There are several factors that can assist in overcoming the bystander effect. Here are the several factors that can assist in overcoming the bystander effect. First is by being observant. One of the primary reasons why individuals frequently fail to respond when assistance is required is because they don't see what is going on until it's too late. Ambiguous situation may also make determining whether or not aid is truly necessary challenging. Rather of relying on the reactions of others around you, keeping alert and aware to your surrounding may help you better decide on how to respond. Being skilled and informed. Knowing what to do in an emergency scenario substantially improves the probability that a person will act. While, while you cannot be prepared for every conceivable incident, attending first aid training may help you feel more competent and prepared to handle future crises. And lastly, try not to be concerned about the consequences of assisting. It is true that those who step in to help in an emergency may endanger themselves. However, the alternative is to spend the rest of your life wondering if your action may have saved someone else's life. Increasing volunteering. Organizations that urge their workers to volunteer should exercise caution in how they do so. If individuals believe they are just volunteering because they have to, they may become less willing to volunteer in the future. It has been demonstrated that encouraging individuals to volunteer while maintaining the idea that they freely choose to do so increases people's sense of well-being and their desire to volunteer once more in the future. Volunteering is a way of giving back to the community. It is donating one's time and ability to assist someone who is in need. Volunteering not only benefits others, but they may be unaware that it might also benefit them. It is a fantastic method for people in their community to engage with one another. It allows someone to spend time alone while still forming relationship with those who are working for the greater good. Volunteering has several advantages for both mental and physical health. Volunteering can assist to alleviate the symptoms of stress, rage, and anxiety. The social component of assisting and interacting with others may have a significant impact on your overall psychological well-being. Volunteering can also help with depression because it brings you in touch with others on a regular basis and helps you build a strong support system which protects you against depression. Positive psychology and prosocial behavior. Positive psychology is a relative new area of psychology. This branch of psychology focuses on ways to help people succeed and live healthy. Positive psychology may be used in a variety real-world settings, including education, counseling, self-help, stress management, and workplace difficulties. Teachers, coaches, therapists, and employers may encourage others and assist individuals in understanding and developing their own talents by employing positive psychology techniques.